Hi everyone, thanks for visiting my channel. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Carol, the Thrifty Chic Housewife. If you enjoy the content you find here, please consider subscribing, like and share my videos, and follow me on social media. I will leave all the links in the description box below. So today we're going to do something really yummy. I've been looking forward to doing this for a while, but I guess I needed a little bit of push to do so. My inspiration comes from when we eat at Cheesecake Factory, which is one of my favorite places to go. I always order the Skinnylicious tacos, and if you've ever had them, you know that a delicious Escabeche salad comes alongside of the tacos, and it is just delicious. And every time we go there to eat, I think I need to come up with a way to can that because I enjoy it so much and I would love to have it on hand. Then a few weeks ago, Linda from Linda's Pantry, and if you're not familiar with her, check out her channel. She is lovely and does a great job with canning as well as gardening and some other great things. So she has a really nice channel, so you'll want to check her out. Anyway, a few weeks ago, she had canned up some spicy carrots, and I saw that video and it gave me the nudge I needed to get busy and come up with a way to can up that Escabeche salad. Now, I'm probably not saying that word exactly right, so forgive me if I'm mispronouncing it, but it's basically spicy Mexican vegetables. Typically in that combination is carrots, cauliflower, jalapenos, and onions. That's traditional. I think, if I recall correctly, Cheesecake Factory also includes cucumbers in theirs, and they also include cabbage. I'm not going to use those today. The cucumbers are not, we don't have our garden going yet, and I think that they would benefit from a homegrown cucumber. I don't typically grow cauliflower or carrots in my garden, so I have to purchase those elsewhere anyway, which is why I'm doing this now. But I think this summer I will can up another batch using the cucumbers as well. So if that's something that appeals to you, you might want to consider adding the cucumbers as well when you're ready to try this recipe. But for today, we're just going to do the cauliflower, onions, carrots, and also jalapeno, and it's so pretty in the jar. And the jar I'm going to be using today, speaking of jars, Ball has a brand new jar called a flute jar, and they are just begging for something pretty to be put in them, so I'm going to use these today for this colorful vegetable mix. And then speaking of new jars, just as I mentioned, Ball came out with, these are new. The spiral jars are not new. I've used those before, but they've come out with this great drinking combination I just had to share. I picked these up the other day at my local Meijer, and I'm just loving it. It's got this great drinking top, and it has room for a straw. You can either use the straw or not use the straw. You can just drink from it, but I think they're so pretty for spring and summer, and they're great to take along with you wherever you go and remind you to get your daily allowance of water. So anyway, just kind of a fun mention. So pickling. I did want to mention a little bit about pickling because there are some cautions with pickling vegetables at home that you're going to can up. Now, we're adding acid, so it would be considered a high acid food, which means we can either steam can it or water bath can it. But there are some precautions we need to take, and I came across this completely accidentally when I was researching how to make salsa when I first started canning. And so I just thought I would share it with you. This is on the National Center for Home Food Preservation's website. I've not come across this information anywhere in Ball's Ball Fresh Preservings information. Haven't found it really in any of their canning books, and I haven't found it on their website. Probably some extension offices may mention it, but I haven't come across it any other place except on the National Center for Home Food Preservation's website. And it's specifically talking about salsa, but it's talking about, and the reason why it's relatable to salsa is because salsas are typically mixtures of acid and low acid ingredients, which is also true of what we're going to be doing today. The vegetables that we're using are low acid. We're using carrots, we're using onions, garlic, peppers, and cauliflower, and all of those are considered low acid foods. But we are canning them in a pickling solution, which is the high acid part. So we have both high acid and low acid foods going on. And basically what they're saying, I'll link this for you. I won't read the whole thing to you, but I will link it so you can read it at your leisure. Basically what they're explaining is that you should really use a tested recipe when you are pickling for shelf stable. Now there is refrigerator pickles, which is not as concerning as something that you're going to can up and put on your shelf. For it to be shelf stable, you have to have the correct proportion of acid to the low acid food to make it shelf stable. They go on to explain that you have to have a pH level of 4.6 or greater for it to be shelf stable for water bath canning. And when you're making up your own recipes, you kind of have no way of knowing that. So they suggest that you always use a tested recipe for salsas, and in this case, pickling in general, so that you have the correct proportion of high acid to low acid so that it's safe on your shelf. So like I said, you can go on their website and read this and come to your own conclusions. But I just wanted to bring that up just as a precaution to keep in the back of your mind when you're pickling. With that in mind, I couldn't find an exact recipe for exactly the vegetables that I was trying to pickle. But one came, and several have come close, but the one that I'm going to use is from the Ball Blue Book of Canning, and it is their hot pickle mix. Now, in their hot pickle mix, they're including some other vegetables that I'm not including today, but to make sure that I had the appropriate proportion of acid to low acid, I'm using their amounts. So, but what I didn't want a batch as big as what they are suggesting doing here. So I cut everything in half. So you're gonna need 9 to 10 cups of your vegetables, whatever combination that you want to use. And then we're going to be using 5 cups of vinegar, and you need to make sure that the vinegar you use is 5% acidity. I'm going to be using white wine vinegar, which is traditional in making the escabeche vegetable salad. So that's what I wanted to use, and I did check the label, and it is 5% acidity. They recommend just using, it just says vinegar. So you could use white vinegar, you could use white balsamic vinegar, you can use whatever vinegar you want to use as long as the label states that it's 5% acidity or greater. So I'm going to be using the white wine because I think that's going to add delicious flavor. And then, so we need 5 cups of the vinegar, and then we are going to need 1 cup of water. And then I'm going to jazz it up with my own seasoning blend. So what I started out doing though, gotta kind of backtrack a little bit here. For your vegetables, I cut up my carrots, my onions, my cauliflower, and I just did them in bite-sized florets. The onions I just did in 1/4 inch slices, cut in half. And then my carrots, I used a crinkle cutter and made them crinkle cut to make them pretty, but you just need to cut those in bite-sized pieces. I'm also going to be including a sliced jalapeno in the jars, and I've sliced those about 1/4 inch thick. I got rid of the membranes and the seeds because I don't want all of that heat. And I'm also going to be including some garlic cloves. Now, the garlic cloves are totally optional, but pickled garlic is really delicious, so I highly encourage you to use that if you are a garlic lover. So anyway, for my veggies, we want to soak them in a salt water solution. That helps to keep them nice and crisp during the canning process. So what I did is I cut up my veggies. Like I said, you want about 9 to 10 cups total, which is what I have here. And I'll leave in the description box exactly how much I used of each vegetable, just for your own reference. And then I added 2 quarts of cold water and 3/4 cup of canning and pickling salt, which is this. I highly recommend that you use the canning and pickling salt anytime that you are dealing with canning. You should use this salt. It's a pure salt. It doesn't have anything added to it like anti-caking agents or iodine. So it's really a good idea anytime you're canning to use this. So that's what I did. I dissolved my salt in the water, added my veggies, and they need to hang out just at room temperature on your counter for about an hour. So that is where we are. So now what we're gonna do is we're going to make our pickling solution, and we're gonna let it simmer to get all the flavors that I wanna add infused into my pickling solution before we can up our veggies. So let me bring you in close and I'll show you what I'm gonna add. Okay, so like I said, I have 5 cups of the vinegar in my saucepan. I'm going to add 1 cup of water. And then to that, we are going to add our seasonings. I'm going to add 1 bay leaf, but you can add as many bay leaves as you want. That's traditional in the escabeche salad. And then I'm going to be using 2 teaspoons of Mexican oregano. You can use regular oregano if you want to, but Mexican oregano, you guys, in any type of Mexican or Latin dishes is totally delicious. So I'm going to be using 2 teaspoons of the Mexican oregano. And then I'm going to use 2 teaspoons of ground cumin. And all of this is to taste, so I'm kind of just making this up. This was not part of the recipe, but flavorings, herbs and spices you can change up safely in canning recipes. And then I'm going to throw in a small handful of black peppercorns. And we're going to give that a stir. And then the recipe in the ball canning book calls for adding 1/4 of a cup, well, it would be half of 1/8 of a cup of sugar. But instead of using sugar, because we're going for a Mexican flavor here, I am going to be using agave. Now, anytime that I make any dish that needs some sweetness added to it, that's Mexican or Latin in flavor, I always use agave. And agave is also delicious in chili. So if you need to kind of balance out the acid of the tomatoes and chili, agave is divine. And it's also great in any kind of Mexican cooking. So instead of using the 1/8 of a cup of sugar, I'm going to use about 2 tablespoons of agave just to sweeten it up just a tiny bit. Most recipes for the escabeche vegetables call for a little bit of sugar, but instead of using sugar, I'm going to use agave. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to bring this up to a boil and then reduce it to a simmer, and we're going to let it simmer for 15 minutes. While that's happening, I'm going to drain and rinse my vegetables and get all of my jars in my canner ready. Okay guys, we are ready to start canning. A couple things before we get started though. One thing I wanted to mention is, so that you don't get freaked out if you use the garlic. If you use fresh garlic and you pickle it, there's a chance that it can turn blue. It's a natural chemical reaction. You didn't do anything wrong and there's nothing wrong with it. But just be aware that as it sits in your jar, it could start to turn blue, but it's totally fine. It's not a big deal and it's totally safe. It's a natural chemical reaction. So I wanted to mention that. And then the other thing that I'm going to use that I didn't mention earlier is pickle crisp granules. Ball makes these, but I'm sure there are other brands. It's just calcium chloride. Adding a little bit of this to anything that you pickle helps to keep the veggies nice and crisp. So I do enjoy using it. We're going to be canning in pint jars, so we need 1/8 of a teaspoon. If you can in quart jars, it's 1/4 of a teaspoon. So we're going to be adding that at the end. For my veggies, I did say this, but I'll just go over it again. I soaked them in the mixture of salt and water for about an hour, and then I drained them and I rinsed them. The only thing that's not included in that per ball's instructions is the garlic and your jalapenos. So I just set my jalapenos and my garlic aside. So my pickling liquid did simmer for the 15 minutes, so we're all ready to go with that. You do want to fish out your bay leaf. So we don't need that in there, so we'll take him out. And then for your jars, you want to make sure that they're squeaky clean and hot. We are going to be canning for more than 10 minutes, and anytime you can for 10 minutes or more, you do not need to pre-sterilize them. So I just wash them and rinse them really well, and they are sitting in my sink full of super hot water. My lids, I'm using the ball just regular canning lids. Those do not need to be simmered anymore, so I just washed them as well and set them aside. So we are all ready to go. Okay, I adjusted you a little bit so I think you can see a little bit better. So let's get a couple of jars. A couple of cloves of garlic in the bottom of each one. I'm going to add a couple of jalapenos to the bottom of each jar. And then add our veggies. We're looking for a 1/2 inch headspace. And you can layer your veggies however you want. If you want to take the time to make sure everything is layered perfectly, that's fine. I think I'm not going to take the time to be that perfect about it. And then I'm going to add a couple more jalapenos. And then more veggies to the 1/2 inch headspace. And you want to pack them in just a little bit. You don't want to pack them super tight, but I do like to push them down in there a little bit. And then I'm going to end with a jalapeno on top. Then we're going to add our pickling liquid, again to a 1/2 inch headspace. And then we're going to debubble. You're going to use your debubbling tool, a chopstick, or a plastic butter knife. Release any air bubbles. Sometimes after you debubble, you will find that you need more liquid. Make sure all your veggies are covered in the pickling liquid. This one I need a little bit more. And we're going to add 1/8 teaspoon of pickle crisp to each jar. Wipe the rim. Add our lids. And then our rings to fingertip tight. Guys, I have all of my jars in my canner. I got about six pint-sized jars. So now we are going to add our lid and I'm going to crank up the heat. If you are water bath canning, you want to make sure that you have enough water in your canner to cover your jars by 1 to 2 inches. Steam canning, you just follow the directions on your steam canner. I only needed about 3 inches of water in the bottom of my canner. We're going to bring our canner up to temperature. For those of you who are water bath canning, you want a full rolling boil. For those who are steam canning, if you have this canner, it has a dial gauge on top that tells you when to start timing. If you have another type of steam canner, you want to make sure you are seeing 6 inches, a stream of steam 6 inches long coming from your steam vents before you start timing. So once we get up to temperature, I'll bring you back and we will start our processing time, and we need 10 minutes. Okay guys, my canner is up to temperature. I am in the green zone on my dial. Like I said, if you have another steam canner, you'll make sure you have a steady stream of steam being released from your vents about 6 inches long. If you're water bath canning, you're at a full rolling boil. So what we want to do now is we want to adjust our heat so that it's not boiling too vigorously. So we want to just maintain the steam if you're using a steam canner, and you want to just maintain a boil if you are using a water bath canner. So we're going to do that for 10 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and set my timer for 10 minutes. And when we're done, I'll bring you back. Okay guys, our time is up. I canned for my 10 minutes. So so we can turn the heat off and you're going to remove the lid. If you are water bath canning, you need to let your jars sit in your canner for 5 minutes. If you are steam canning, you can take them out immediately. There's no need to wait the 5 minutes. So let's take them out and see how beautiful they are. Love these new jars. They are so pretty. Give you a close up. See how beautiful those are? Yum, yum. Delicious jalapenos, carrots, cauliflower, onions, yum. All spiced up and ready to eat with your tacos, your enchiladas, your burritos, all that fun stuff. They're great. Like I said, if you've ever been to Cheesecake Factory and had their Skinnylicious tacos, this is on the side and it is absolutely delicious. So I hope you will give it a try. If you have any questions or comments about the recipe, leave them for me in the comment section. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you next time.